This morning, Donald Trump just came out and said it. Trump just announced that the whole thing about the post office, trying to defund it, putting in a crony, destroy it from the inside out, that isn't just a secret plot to make it more difficult for people to vote this year. It's now a totally open plot. Listen.
$3.5 billion for something that'll turn out to be fraudulent. That's election money, basically. They want $3.5 billion for the mail-in votes, okay, universal mail-in ballots. 3.5 trillion. They want $25 billion for the post office. Now they need that money in order to have the post office work, so it can take all of these millions and millions of ballots. Now, in the meantime, they aren't getting there. By the way, those are just 2 items. But if they don't get those 2 items, that means you can't have universal mail-in voting because they're not equipped to have it. And you see how bad it's been.
Yeah, so that's just totally out there. He's saying they want this money so that they can have mail-in voting. If they don't get it, they can't have mail-in voting. And he's making sure that they don't get that money. This is as clear as it can possibly be, Jason. The question is just, is anyone going to do anything about it?
That's always a question when it comes to these type of policies that 45 wants to imbue on the American society, right? And I was in a post office in Los Angeles 2 weeks ago and then here in Miami, and there's a maudlin energy when you walk into these places because the employees are taxed, right? There's one person working there, they're doing the best they can. They are under severe stress, not only because we're in the middle of a pandemic, but these people are trying to hold on to their jobs at a place that's severely underfunded and they don't know what's gonna happen next. It's the post office and receiving your mail, John, is as American as baseball, football, and anything that we enjoy here as American citizens. So for Trump to come out and say, hey, I'm going to take away something that could possibly help these people, as you said, it's clear as day what the conspiracy that people have been saying about voter suppression is, and that is that it exists, and this is just another way, or not so much a covert way of enacting that, right? Read between the lines, if you will. Then, if he's not coming out and saying this is what I'm going to do to have a negative effect on the post office, then read between the lines and realize that that's what he is exactly saying. And some people are denying that, but he is saying that I'm going to do what I can to win this election in 2020 by doing whatever I can to win this election in 2020.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, the way that I think Cenk, he tweeted to this effect in the morning. He's like, what you're supposed to do, you big idiot, is to pretend there's some other reason. Come up with some excuse for why you have to cut the funding, but actually behind the scenes be doing it to stop people from voting. But he just bumbles into, no, that's why I'm doing it. But the thing is that, like, we don't get to point the finger and ha-ha him if nothing happens when he does that. If he still gets to cut the funding, if the votes still don't happen, then the joke is indeed on us. And so that's why I'm waiting to see what's actually gonna happen. Because at this point, we now have sort of similar, so in 2016, we knew months out that there was stuff going on, the intent of which was to try to influence the election. For a variety of reasons, not everybody could get behind thinking that that was necessarily an issue. Whether you think it was or not, fine. Now, no one should be able to say that this isn't an issue, that we're not allowed to or shouldn't, or that we're hysterical if we think that trying to cut funding to stop people from voting by mail during a horrific pandemic that is as bad today as effectively it's been since the beginning is not a bad thing. We can all get together. This isn't 2016 anymore. Anyone who doesn't fight on this issue, I have no idea what is motivating them politically, what their objectives are, because it certainly isn't winning elections.
And John, there will be some people who will say that that is not what the president's doing. His base will say, no, this makes perfect sense. This is the right policy, and we'll try to justify to at any length why this is good. But I agree with you 100%. Your question is though, how do we fight this? And that in itself is beyond me, because it seems like the more we try to galvanize and mobilize and fight these injustices, the bigger they become and the harder it gets, to fight these things. So I don't know how we fight this, really, I don't. But doing what we're doing here now, speaking out about it, I think that's the best course of action as we as American people have to fight this, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's just so many of the mechanisms that like 4 years ago I would have said, oh, well, you should do this. Oh, no, wait, that doesn't work. Oh, he can say it and he doesn't get, it doesn't hurt him pressure wise. His base doesn't actually, they don't want people to vote. So it being revealed isn't gonna hurt him with his base. And well, you can't even impeach him because no matter how obvious the crimes are, he's not actually gonna get removed because the Senate doesn't care because they also don't want people to vote. So there's just a lot of these provisions that aren't really provisions anymore. They're sort of like these interesting relics of the democracy we thought we had, and it turns out that a lot of it was, it was only as effective as the emperor's clothes.
Right.
Yeah, so it's a big problem. Certainly got to talk about it. And also one thing that I hope helps to make it get through to people is that it isn't just Trump. That should be enough. But take a look at Larry Kudlow talking about the issues with the stimulus funding negotiations that are ongoing.
So much of the Democratic asks are really liberal left wish lists. We don't want to have voting rights and aid to aliens and so forth. That's not our game, and the president can't accept that kind of deal.
Yeah, so voting rights aren't our game. Well, that's honest. You got to give him points for honesty.
Right. I know. Speaking on this whole stimulus, I know we're talking about the Postal Service, but it's all just one dumpster fire to me, John. What's so frustrating about them renegotiating and trying to get more money out to people is that I feel like they don't realize how bad people need aid right now. I don't understand what world we're living in where these people on the Hill and in Congress or whoever's making these decisions aren't listening and seeing that in some states, okay, look, California has amazing unemployment, if you will, for what it is, right? It pays probably one of the most out of the union, and taking that additional 600 or taking away additional funding, there's people who can't even afford to pay their rent now or to feed their kids. And then you have this pandemic, this other layer of that you have to somewhat qualify for that you may not qualify for when your benefits run out. So I really think that people just don't care, or the people that are making the decisions on the Republican Party just don't care about the well-being of the American people, but claim to say that. And I'm glad this guy was honest. It was like, listen, voter rights, sure, I guess that's our thing, but whatever. I would rather honesty than a lie or to I don't know, trick us into thinking that you have our well-being and our best interest at heart when in fact you don't.
Yeah, and I'm glad when they come out with videos like that, like you said, that are very honest, because I continually try to remind people that there is an ongoing war for what system of government we're going to have. Are we actually going to have a democracy in this country? And it isn't sexy to talk about it, and so generally it doesn't get talked about. But you have the Republican Party that has been attempting in ways that are explicit, some that are a little bit harder to see, to chip away at those rights, which were never all that solid to begin with, for literally decades. And you have the Democratic Party that's like kind of resisting the backslide in some ways, and then not using the opportunities they have. Like when we had basically unified government for a short period under Obama, some of the things that could have been done to make our elections significantly more solid and secure and accessible to working Americans weren't done. And we need to put pressure on the Democratic Party to be as vigorous in their defense of our democratic rights as the Republican Party is in their offense against those.
100%. I couldn't agree more. It's a go hard. It's a beyond a go hard or go home situation. We're praying for this Hail Mary that will happen with Biden and Kamala, right? We're praying that this will be something that's beautiful and will change. And it's almost as if we're desperate for this to happen. But I do think along the way, you mentioned, great word, vigorous. We need to be just as vigorous as our enemy. I'm gonna call it what it is, as our enemy, as they are trying to end what we're trying to do and what we're trying to conquer and what we're trying to achieve. And what swift kick in the ass is gonna make that happen though?
Right?
It's exhausting to even think about it.
Like I thought that same thing about some other issues, like about prioritizing climate change, and sometimes the right politician making it core to their messaging, like AOC and some others. Maybe that could do it. Maybe if one of these politicians comes in and just really starts focusing on this, maybe that could be something. I don't know, honestly. Yeah. I have more like requests than answers these days, unfortunately.
Right.
Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.